Sleeping 5 hours instead of 8 hours is reducing your body's anabolic hormone output by 60%. But I know what you're thinking. I have slept for 6 hours for years and I've functioned fine. My muscle gain has been fine. And I used to think the same thing too. But what I'm about to tell you is going to change how you approach sleep from now on. But what is anabolic hormone output actually doing? Let me first frame it as a clear example. Say you have two athletes, identical training programs, identical nutrition. The only difference between them, one sleeps 8 hours and the other one sleeps 5 hours. After 12 weeks of studying them, we get two very different results in body composition. Not because of something that was happening differently inside the gym, but because something different was happening after they left the gym. The gym is only the stimulus, the sleep is where the body adapts. But that is the thing that nobody talks about with the amount of attention that it deserves because it feels less exciting, right? Sleep is so less exciting than a new workout routine, than a new supplement. But if you pay close attention to what studies have found, you will be approaching your sleep routines very differently. I'm gonna show you the relationship between sleep and muscle loss. I'm gonna plot the data now, and the plot is from a reputed research paper. This is the muscle mass that people who slept for 5.5 hours lost, and this is the muscle mass that people who slept for 8.5 hours lost. The difference between them is 60%. 60% more muscle mass loss if you sleep for 5.5 hours than if you were sleeping for 8.5 hours. I'll be linking the study in the description so you can check it out if you want. Growth hormone signals your body to make the tissues and cells for protein synthesis and repair your muscle fibers, build new muscle fibers. Growth hormone is not released steadily whole throughout the day. Instead, it spikes at certain moments of the day, and the largest growth hormone spike occurs within 60 to 90 minutes after you fall asleep. That is the first stage of your slow wave sleep. The research of Van Corter and his colleagues come handy here. For decades, they mapped the relationship between sleep and your endocrine function. What they found was that growth hormone pulse is architecture dependent. It is not triggered by time, it is not triggered by rest, it is triggered by specifically the physiological state of slow wave sleep. But why does it matter? It matters because you cannot replicate that. You cannot sleep in on Saturday or Sunday and undo 5 nights of bad sleep. You cannot take a nap and undo this biological function. It has its own schedule, and if that sleep stage is shortened, bad sleep, then you cannot recover from that. Then the growth pulse is blunted, it is stopped. You cannot achieve that level with sleeping extra or sleeping, taking naps. And when growth hormone is blunted, the consequences for anyone building muscle are significant. Growth hormone stimulates IGF-1. IGF-1 is responsible for muscle protein synthesis and for satellite cell activation, the two core processes of muscle hypertrophy. Less growth hormone, less IGF-1, less signal to your body to build the muscle that you worked so hard for in the gym. The hours, all that you spent, you trained, you created the stimulus, but you never cashed in the check. But growth hormone is only half the story. The other half of the story includes testosterone. And what sleep depth does to these two hormones simultaneously, they create such a compounding effect that the numbers are frankly alarming. Let's talk about testosterone because this is where sleep depth stops being a recovery problem, but it also becomes a performance problem. In 2011, Van Cotter and Lepro published a study. They took some young men, average age of 24, and they reduced their sleep to just 5 hours for 1 week. Not months, not weeks, 1 week, and their testosterone levels dropped by 10 to 15%. 10 to 15% in 7 days in young men at their testosterone peak. Now, in isolation, that number may seem concerning, but certainly manageable. But it is not only a testosterone drop, it's also a cortisol raise. And that is where it becomes an entirely different problem. Cortisol, which is highest during the morning and generally tapers down throughout the day, remains elevated even till evening. And evening cortisol is catabolic. It actively promotes muscle protein breakdown, actively works against the anabolic response you're trying to do in the gym. Picture this, a healthy weightlifter. Now imagine him going through 7 days of 5 hour sleeps. Cortisol is higher, testosterone is lower. Your whole hormone system is working against you. So the work you're putting in the gym for months is not reflecting. You can still raise the same point that I have worked through bad sleep and I've worked out and I've had fine muscle gains. And I'm not saying that you didn't have good muscle gains, but I'm telling you to look at how much growth you have made in that period of bad sleep versus someone who has slept well and had the same training as you did. I'm asking you to not look at how much you've grown. I'm asking you to look at how much you're leaving on the table. The research doesn't say that bad sleep is eliminating your gains. The research is saying that bad sleep is interfering with your body's functioning, which is interfering with your muscle gain. Sleep depth is not just a one night problem and a one night solution. The recovery curve is much higher. And to point you how much important sleep is, let me talk about LeBron James. LeBron James has multiple times said in countless interviews that he treats sleep as one of the most important pillars of his recovery strategy. Multiple interviews and reports of LeBron James has described him as targeting 8 to 10 hours of sleep per day with additional daytime naps in between the competitions and in between the training. Think about that for a second. One of the most genetically gifted athletes in the world with access to any recovery system that money can buy still prioritizes the most basic recovery intervention, sleep. Van Dongen's research found that just 2 weeks of sleeping for 6 hours or less is the equivalent of being awake for 2 whole days. The participants stopped noticing the fatigue after a few days, but the effects of that sleep deficit just kept on compounding. Okay, I made a mistake of sleeping less. I have sleep depth accumulated now. What is the solution, Sarkar Babu? I'm telling you. You see, for 1 week of bad sleep takes about 3 or 4 days of full sleep to just recover. Just sleeping extra on a Sunday or a Saturday, it only makes a small difference. Everybody talks about the problem. What is the solution? In my experience, I have 3 tips for you that have worked tremendously for me, and if you apply, let me know if it works for you. The first tip is cut off caffeine, but cut off caffeine earlier than you think. Caffeine's half-life is for 6 hours. You can take caffeine in the morning, will be in your body till the night. Cut off caffeine before afternoon, because the evening caffeine that you take in, that will be actively working against you if you try to fall asleep. Now tip number 2 is lower your room temperature. It is understood in biology that your body's temperature must drop off by 1 degree Celsius in order to start sleep. So it is harder to fall asleep in a warm room. I personally open the windows so the air can come in, or I increase the speed of the fan. But you can also take a bath before you go to sleep, as it also reduces your body's temperature and it helps in you falling asleep. The practical target is to keep your room between 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. The third tip, obvious tip, maintain sleep consistency. Your circadian rhythm is not just when you wake up. It governs the whole sleep architecture that you have. It decides when the slow wave sleep episodes occur and how deep they go. So when your sleeping time varies night to night, the circadian rhythm cannot properly synchronize, and so your slow wave sleep suffers. Research says that you should go in the bed within the same 30-minute time period, because then the slow wave sleep quality will be much better than if you sleep an extra hour at a different time. Consistency is more valuable than the duration. And like I said, the growth hormone pulse, that is also timed by the circadian rhythm. So all these things are related. Sleep is not recovery from the training. Sleep is also the training. The hard work that you put in the gym is only as good as the sleep that you're going to get tonight. So tell me, are you going to have a good night's sleep tonight?